Letter 35 of Letters from England, 1846 to 1849, by Elizabeth Davis Bancroft. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Letter to W.D.B., London, May 5, 1848. My dear W., last evening, Thursday, we went to see Jenny Lind, on her first appearance this year. She was received with enthusiasm, and the Queen still more so. It was the first time the Queen had been at the opera since the birth of her child, and since the Republican spirit was abroad, and loyalty burst out in full force. Now loyalty is very novel, and pleasant to witness, to us who have never known it. London, May 31, 1848. Now for my journal, which has gone lamely on since the 24th of February. The Queen's ball was to take place on the evening on which I closed my last letter. My dress was a white crape over white satin, with flounces of Honiton lace looped up with pink tuberoses. A wreath of tuberoses and bouquet for the corsage. We had tickets sent us to go through the garden and set down at a private door, which saves waiting in the long line of carriages for your turn. The diplomatic corps arranged themselves in a line near the door at which the Queen enters the suite of rooms, which was at 10 precisely. She passes through, curtsying and bowing very gracefully, until she reaches the throne in the next room, where she and the Duchess of Cambridge, the Duchess of Saxe-Weimar, and her daughters, who are here on a visit, etc., etc., sit down, while Prince Albert, the Prince of Prussia, and other sprigs of royalty stand near. The dancing soon began in front of the canopy, but the Queen herself did not dance on account of her mourning for Prince Albert's grandmother. There was another band and dancing in other rooms at the same time. After seeing several dances here, the Queen and her suite move by the flourish of trumpets to another room, the guests forming a line as she passes, bowing and smiling. Afterwards she made a similar progress to supper, her household officers moving backwards before her, and her ladies and royal relatives and friends following. At 1:30 Her Majesty retired and the guests departed, such as did not have to wait 2 hours for their carriages. On Saturday we went at 2 to the Fête of Flowers at Chiswick, and at 7:30 dined at Lord Monteagle's to meet Monsieur and Mademoiselle Guizot. He has the finest head in the world, but his person is short and insignificant. On Wednesday we dined at Lady Chantrey's to meet a charming party. Afterward we went to a magnificent ball at the Duke of Devonshire's with all the great world. On Friday we went to Faraday's lecture at the Royal Institution. We went in with the Duke and Duchess of Northumberland, and I sat by her during the lecture. On Saturday was the Queen's birthday drawing-room. Mr. Bancroft dined at Lord Palmerston's with all the diplomats, and I went in the evening with a small party of ladies. On coming home we drove round to see the brilliant birthday illuminations. The first piece of intelligence I heard at Lady Palmerston's was the death of the Princess Sophia, an event which is a happy release for her, for she was blind and a great sufferer. It has overturned all court festivities, of course, for the present, and puts us all in deep mourning, which is not very convenient just now, in the brilliant season, and when we all had our dress arrangements made. The Queen was to have a concert tonight, a drawing-room next Friday, and a ball on the 16th, which are all deferred. I forgot to say that I got a note from Miss Coutts on Sunday, asking me to go with her the next day to see the Chinese junk, so at 3 the next day we repaired to her house. Her sisters, Miss Burdett's, and Mr. Rogers were all the party. At the junk for the first time I saw Metternich and the Princess, his wife. End of Letter 35. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Of Letters from England, 1846 to 1849, by Elizabeth Davis Bancroft. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Letter to W.D.B., London, June 29, 1848. My dear W., when I last left off I was going to dine at Miss Coutts's to meet the Duchess of Cambridge. The party was brilliant, including the Duke of Wellington, Lord and Lady Douro, Lady Jersey, and the beautiful Lady Clementina Villiers, her daughter, etc. When royal people arrive everybody rises and remains standing while they stand, and if they approach you or look at you, you must perform the lowest of curtsies. The courtesy made to royalty is very like the one I was taught to make when I was a little girl at Miss Tuft's school in Plymouth. One sinks down instead of stepping back in dancing-school fashion. After dinner the Duchess was pleased to stand until the gentlemen rejoined us. Of course we must all stand. The next day we dined at the Lord Mayor's to meet the ministers. This was a most interesting affair. We had all the peculiar ceremonies which I described to you last autumn, but in addition the party was most distinguished, and we had speeches from Lord Lansdowne, Lord Palmerston, Lord John, Lord Auckland, Sir George Grey, etc. End of Letter 36. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letters from England, 1846 to 1849, by Elizabeth Davis Bancroft. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Letter to W.D.B., London, July 21, 1848. I was truly grieved that the last steamer should go to Boston without a line from me, but I was in Yorkshire and you must forgive me. I left off with the 26th of June. The next evening was the Queen's concert, which was most charming. I sat very near the Duke of Wellington, who often spoke to me between the songs. The next day we went with Miss Coutts to her bank, lunched there, and went all over the building. Then we went to the Tower and the Tunnel together, she never having seen either. So ignorant are the West End people of city lions. And now comes my pleasant Yorkshire excursion. We left London at 3:30, at distance of 180 miles. This was Saturday, July 8th. At York we found Mr. Hudson ready to receive us and conduct us to a special train which took us 18 miles on the way to Newby Park, and there we found carriages to take us 4 miles to our destination. We met at dinner and found our party to consist of the Duke of Richmond, Lord Lonsdale, Lord George Bentinck, Lord Ingestre, Lord John Beresford, Lady Webster, whose husband, now dead, was the son of Lady Holland, 2 or 3 agreeable talkers to fill in, and ourselves. Tuesday. Lady Webster, Mr. Bancroft, and myself went to Castle Howard, as Lord Morpeth had written to his mother that we were to be there and would lunch with her. Castle Howard is 25 miles the other side of York, which is itself 25 miles from Newby. But what is 50 miles, when one is under the wing of the railway king and can have a special engine at one's disposal? On arriving at the Castle Howard station we found Lord Carlisle's carriage with 4 horses and most venerable coachman waiting to receive us. We enter the park almost immediately, but it is about 4 miles to the castle, through many gates, which we had mounted footmen open for us. Lady Carlisle received us in the most delightful manner. I was delighted to see Lord Morpeth's home and his mother, who seldom now goes to London. She was the daughter of the beautiful Duchess of Devonshire, and took me into her own dressing-room to show me her picture. On Wednesday we went into York to witness the reception of Prince Albert, to see the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey, the flower show, to lunch with the Lord Mayor, and above all, to attend prayers in the minster and hear a noble anthem. The cathedral was crowded with strangers and a great many from London. The next day was the day of the great dinner, and I send you the post containing Mr. Bancroft's speech. It was warmly admired by all who heard it. At 10 at night we ladies set out for York to go to the Lord Mayor's ball, where the gentlemen were to meet us from the dinner. Everybody flocked round to congratulate me upon your father's speech. Even Prince Albert, when I was led up to make my curtsy, offered me his hand, which is a great courtesy in royalty, and spoke of the great beauty and eloquence of Mr. B.'s speech. The Prince soon went away. The Lord Mayor took me down to supper, and I sat between him and the Duke of Richmond at the high table which went across the head of the hall. Guildhall is a beautiful old room with a fine old traceried window, and the scene, with 5 tables going the length of the hall and upper one across the head, was very gay and brilliant. There were a few toasts, and your father again made a little speech, short and pleasant. We did not get home till 3:30 in the morning. On Friday morning, July 14th, many of the guests, the Duke of Richmond, etc., took their departure, and Mr. Hudson had to escort Prince Albert to town, but returned the same evening. The next day we all went to pay a visit to an estate of Mr. Hudson's, for which he paid £500,000 to the Duke of Devonshire. It is nobly situated in the Yorkshire wolds, a fine range of hills, and overlooking the valley of the Humber, which was interesting to me, as it was the river which our Pilgrim fathers sailed down, and lay in the Wash at its mouth, awaiting their passage to Holland. They came, our Pilgrim fathers, mostly from Lincolnshire and the region which lay below us. I thought of them, and the scene of their sufferings was more ennobled in my eyes from their remembrance than from the noble mansions and rich estates which feast the eye. On Monday morning we left Newby for York on our way home. It so happened that the judges were to open the court that very morning, on which occasion they always breakfast with the Lord Mayor in their scarlet robes and wigs. The Lord Mayor and Aldermen are also in their furred scarlet robes, and the Lady Mayoress presents the judges with enormous bouquets of the richest flowers. We were invited to this breakfast, and I found it very entertaining. I was next the High Sheriff, who was very desirous that we should stay a few hours and go to the castle and see the court opened and listen to a case or two. The High Sheriff of a county is a great character, and has a carriage and liveries as grand as the Queen's. After breakfast we bade adieu to our York friends, and set off with our big bouquets, for the distribution was extended to us, for home. End of Letter 37. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. From England, 1846 to 1849, by Elizabeth Davis Bancroft. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Letter to T.D., London, August 9th, 1848. My dear brother, on Saturday we set off for Nuneham, the magnificent seat of the late Archbishop of York, now in possession of his eldest son, Mr. Granville Harcourt. The other guests besides ourselves were Sir Robert and Lady Peel, Lord and Lady Villiers, Lord and Lady Norris, Lord Harry Vane, etc. We considered it a great privilege to be staying in the same house with Sir Robert Peel, and I had also the pleasure of sitting by him at dinner all the 3 days we were there. He was full of conversation of the best kind. Mr. Denison and Lady Charlotte, his wife, were also of the party. She was the daughter of the Duke of Portland, and sister of Lord George Bentinck, Sir Robert's great antagonist in the house. On Sunday morning we attended the pretty little church on the estate, which, with its parsonage, is a pleasing object on the grounds. The next day the whole party were taken to Blenheim, the seat of the famous Duke of Marlborough, built at the expense of the country. The grounds are exquisite, but I was most charmed by the collection of pictures. Here were the finest Van Dycks, Rubens, and Sir Joshua Reynolds which I have ever seen. Sir Robert Peel is a great connoisseur in art, and seemed highly to enjoy them. Altogether it was a truly delightful day, the drive of 15 miles in open carriages, and through Oxford, being of itself a high pleasure. Yesterday we returned to London, and on Thursday we set out for Scotland. End of Letter 38. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Letters from England, 1846 to 1849, by Elizabeth Davis Bancroft. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Letter to Mr. and Mrs. I.P.D., Edinburgh, August 16, 1848. My dear Uncle and Aunt, of Edinburgh I cannot say enough to express my admiration. The Castle Rock, Arthur's Seat, Salisbury Craigs, and Calton Hill are all separate and fine mountains, and with the Frith of Forth, the ocean, and the old picturesque town, make an assemblage of fine objects that I have seen nowhere else. Mr. Rutherford, the Lord Advocate, who is of the Ministry, had written to his friends that we were coming, and several gentlemen came by breakfast time the next morning. Mr. Gordon, his nephew, married the daughter of Professor Wilson, and invited us to dine that day to meet the Professor, etc. We drove out after breakfast into the country to Hawthornden, formerly the residence of Drummond the poet, and to Lord Roslin's grounds, where are the ruins of Roslin Castle, and above all of the Roslin Chapel. After lingering and admiring long, we returned to Edinburgh, just in season for dinner at Mr. Gordon's, where we found Professor Wilson, and another daughter and son, Mrs. Rutherford, wife of the Lord Advocate, and Captain Rutherford, his brother, with his wife. We had a very agreeable evening, and engaged to dine there again, quite en famille, with only the Professor, whose conversation is delightful. The next morning we went out to Craigcook, Lord Jeffreys's country seat, to see and lunch with him. He was confined to his couch. He is 73 or 74, but looks not a minute older than 50. He has a fine head and forehead, and most agreeable and courteous manners, rather of the old school. As he could not rise to receive me he kissed my hand. Mrs. Jeffrey is an intelligent and agreeable woman, but has been much out of health the last year. She was Miss Wilkes of New York, you know. The house was an old castellated and fortified house, and with modern additions, is a most beautiful residence. Captain Rutherford told me that when he received the Lord Advocate's letter announcing that we were coming, he went to see Lord Jeffrey to know if he would be well enough to see us, and he expressed the strongest admiration for Mr. Bancroft's work. This may have disposed them to receive us with the cordiality which made our visit so agreeable. Mr. Empson, his son-in-law and the present editor of the Edinburgh Review, was staying there, and after talking 2 hours with Lord and Mrs. Jeffrey, we took with him a walk in the grounds, from which are delightful and commanding views of the whole environs, and never were environs so beautiful. End of Letter 39. Read by Sibella Denton. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org.